It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the three films of June 29th, 2007. We've got Brad Bird's follow-up to The Incredibles, the long-awaited fourth installment of the Die Hard series, and an ensemble film that probably would have been an Oscar contender if it had been released closer to the Oscars, but there's a reason why this was pushed into the summer. We'll get to that in just a little bit, but before we do any of that, let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is, of course, the newest film from Disney and Pixar, Brad Bird's Ratatouille.
And tonight, before the dessert course, we present for your pleasure the traditional cheese trolley. To start, we have an excellent clochette, creamy, very nice, very light. Next, a brebis, hearty, with a surprising bite, I think you'll find. And finally, the pièce de résistance, very special, very rare.
This is me. I think it's apparent that I need to rethink my life a little bit. I can't help myself. I like good food, okay? And good food is hard for a rat to find.
It wouldn't be so hard to find if you weren't so picky.
I don't want to eat garbage, Dad. What is that?
I don't really know.
You don't know, and you're eating it.
You know, if you can sort of muscle your way past the gag reflex, all kinds of food possibilities open up.
This is what I'm talking about. I don't think any of this would have come up, but we happen to live in Paris, France. And it's so easy to find good food in Paris. It's just dangerous.
Gotta rethink your life.
He's right, you know.
Let it go, Dad!
This one's an interesting one for me personally. The title, of course, refers to the French dish ratatouille and also references the species of the main character, a rat. And set mostly in Paris, you follow a young rat played by Patton Oswalt who dreams of becoming a chef at Auguste Gusteau's restaurant. The chef's being played by Brad Garrett, and also trying to achieve his goal of forming an unlikely alliance with the restaurant's garbage boy, Alfredo Linguini, played by Lou Romano. And of course, you have a storyline going on within the story where he realizes that he's actually the father of Gusteau, and it just goes through various different phases of the storyline. They got to deal with a food critic that wants to shut the place down, and I'll be honest with you. When I first saw this movie, I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I really didn't think it was that good of a movie overall. It's a movie that I needed time to really take in. I needed a few years to really appreciate how good it really was. Because, like I said, it didn't wow me at first, but then it took a couple of viewings, like about maybe, I want to say 4 or 5 different viewings after I saw it for the first time. That's when I finally started to realize why people were talking about this as, such the great movie that it was. I mean, it is a movie that really, you have to let it take its time with you to really appreciate what makes it so special. And I don't know why. I think it was mostly because the first time I saw it, I didn't really get invested by it. I was kind of bored by it at first. It was more talk. There was a lot more dialogue than there was actual, action and a storyline going on here. Not that a movie like this needs to have a whole lot of action going on in it, but, considering what Brad Bird had done beforehand with The Iron Giant and The Incredibles, this is a much more laid-back movie. And it took me a while to really realize why that was working for this film going forward. At first, I was just kind of like, yeah, this isn't really working for me. But then, like I said, about 4 or 5 times after I saw the film for the first time, that's when I finally started to realize why this worked, and why, around the time I had become more convinced of how, not every movie needs to have a whole lot of action. You can actually have a lot more dialogue in a movie than anything going on in terms of, like, big adventure and all that stuff. And yeah, there is adventure in here. There is a little bit of action here and there, but a lot of it comes in the dialogue. A lot of it comes in the relationships between the characters. Like, you have the relationship between the rat and the garbage boy. You have him in the relationship with this woman played by Janine Garofalo. You have this kind of asshole antagonist chef who wants to take over the restaurant. You have Remy trying to work with his family in general, who doesn't want him to be this fancy food guy, just be happy with what he has to have to work with here. They got to deal with the food critic, who also has a big storyline towards the end of the movie. Like, it really did take me time to really appreciate the true majesty of what made this movie so special, and it really works because it is unlike the other movies that Brad Bird had done before. It is more laid back. It is more straight. It's more straightforward than it's letting on. Like, it's a movie that lets the storyline just play out, and lets the dialogue really be the reason why the movie holds up and has the big payoff at the end. Because yeah, the movie overall works incredibly well on so many levels because of how good the dialogue really is. When the film really delivers the best stuff is in the second half, when they have to deal with the food critic, and the way the food critic actually has a change of heart because of the food that they serve him, and there is a lot of nice dialogue in the movie. There's a lot of stuff that they do in here that, yeah, it works to the film's advantage overall, and it made me realize after those few times I saw it, what really made this movie so special was the fact that, yeah, it was something radically different from this director, from what Pixar had been doing before. It's not the same storyline they had done before so many times before in the past, and it's a really good movie. It's a very entertaining film. It's another masterpiece by Brad Bird that took its time for me to really get my full interest in, and when it finally hit me on why this movie works so well, I fell in love with it every time I see it. Like, it's a movie that I've understood now to be as good as everyone had said beforehand. It just took me a long time to really appreciate what the movie was trying to do at this point, and it just works really well. It's an incredible film, very well done, very nicely animated, very emotional, nice storyline, nice voice work. It's a really good movie. It's one I can't recommend enough. Ratatouille. It's a great film. If you see it for the first time, it may not hit you at first, but once you get a couple of viewings into it, you'll really appreciate the true nature of why this movie is so special. At least that's what happened with me, but who knows what might happen with you people out there. But with all that said, let's go ahead and move on to the other big new release of the summer, and that of this weekend in particular, and that was Live Free or Die Hard.
Why are you so calm? Have you done that kind of stuff before?
Oh, he's done that kind of stuff before, Justin Long. He's done it many, many times before then, and he'll do it at least one more time after this movie. But Live Free or Die Hard. This is the fourth installment of the Die Hard series that, let's be honest, a lot of people did not expect we were ever going to get. I mean, Die Hard with a Vengeance really was kind of the final. It was a good end to a pretty strong trilogy. It wrapped up the storyline from what they were setting up in Die Hard with a Vengeance. It's a nice, bookend to how the first movie got started. It just worked on so many levels, and you didn't really need another film to really continue the storyline. You could have just stopped it with there. There had actually been attempts to make another Die Hard film. I think Tears of the Sun was actually supposed to be a Die Hard movie, but they passed it. They just made that its own film, and probably would have been better if that was a Die Hard movie, because yeah, the Tears of the Sun we got was not a good film. But this is Live Free or Die Hard. This is based off of a 1997 article called A Farewell to Arms. But in the film, you have John McClane, once again played by Bruce Willis, who's attempting to stop a cyber terrorist, Thomas Gabriel, played by Timothy Olyphant, who hacks into government and commercial computers across the United States with the goal of starting a fire sale cyber attack that would disable key elements of the nation's infrastructure. You also have Justin Long as Bruce Willis's partner in this adventure. You have Mary Elizabeth Winstead playing his daughter, who's now all grown up. Cliff Curtis is in here. Maggie Q. Kevin Smith also has a role in here as well. What's notable about this movie is two things. One, the director is Len Wiseman, who did the Underworld movies, which I've said before are not great films in general, but most notably, this is the only PG-13 rated Die Hard movie. This was back when Tom Rothman was running Fox, and for some reason he thought, we're going to make a new Die Hard movie, but you know who needs to come see this? The families. Let's make this a PG-13 rated movie. And it's just like, the same man that said that he hates the X-Men, but he'll do everything with Wolverine because he loves that character so much. And let's also do a PG-13 Alien vs. Predator movie because that'll work, right? Oh, that didn't work? Well, here, we'll give you an R-rated one, too. Oh, that didn't work either. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself with that one because that's coming later in the year. But to the film's credit, though, this was actually a really good movie. Despite the PG-13 rating, I actually really did like Live Free or Die Hard a lot. I thought it was still just as fun as the other movies are. Yeah, it's not... it's, it doesn't have, the same things that made the R-rated movie so great. He only gets to say his famous line, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," one time. But the way they do it in this movie actually does work in the end. It works fine for what it is, and especially when you consider that A Good Day to Die Hard came after this, and that went back to the R rating, and then you have a terrible director who, is trying so hard to take Die Hard back to its original R-rated roots, and then you get a bad movie like that. Yeah, I think we can all handle this movie in general. Yeah, the film overall is good. Is it a great film? No, it's not. It's kind of like the Toy Story 4 and the Kung Fu Panda 4 of the Die Hard series. It's a sequel that does not need to exist, but for a fourth film in a series that worked on its own as a trilogy, it works out. It works on its own merits. I like Bruce Willis is still having a ton of fun in this. Justin Long has a couple good seasons here. Mary Elizabeth Winstead's very good here. Timothy Olyphant is a good villain. Kevin Smith has a ton of fun in the little role he has in here. The action sequences are still a ton of fun to watch. They're ridiculous. They're over the top, but they're still very fun all across the board. I like it a lot. I still think it's a very enjoyable film. It's a really good film that I think worked this one time without going to the limits that the first three films had already set up. And the fact that they tried to go back to that with the next movie didn't work out in its favor. Probably was a sign that now would have been that would have been a good time to end the series at that level. It would have been better if you ended it here, but of course this movie became the big success that it was. It actually did become the highest grossing installment of the Die Hard series, which is why they made the next movie after this, but this is the last real good Die Hard movie that came from this, and yeah, it's a good movie overall. It's not as good as the trilogy, but I'll still take it. It's a really fun film overall. I had a good time with it. I still enjoy it. Live Free or Die Hard. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to our last film that we have here, and that is the ensemble Evening.
The author of the hours.
Close your eyes and think of a time when you were happy.
Experience this summer's must-see movie, starring the greatest actresses of our time. It's about the choices we make and the love that fills our lives.
We are mysterious creatures, aren't we?
Evening, rated PG-13, now playing.
Yes, starring the greatest actresses of our time. Oscars, please. Literally, this movie existed so all these people could be in this film, and hopefully, if the studio is smart, they'll release it in around Oscar time, and it will be a movie that will get several Academy Award nominations, and, no, it did not. This is actually based off of a book written by Susan Minot, who actually wrote the script for this, based off of her 1998 novel of the same name, where you have the love which binds mother and daughter, seen through the prism of one mother's life as it crests with optimism, navigating a turning point and ebbs it to the close. Overcome by the power of memories, Anne Lord, played by Vanessa Redgrave, reveals a long-held secret to her concerned daughters. Constance Haverford, played by Natasha Richardson, a content wife and mother, and Nina Mars, played by Toni Collette, a restless single woman. Both are bedside when Anne calls out for the man that she loved more than any other. But who is this Harris, wonder her daughters, and what is he to our mother? While Constance and Nina try to take stock of Anne's life and their own lives, their mother is tended by a night nurse played by Dame Eileen Atkins, as she journeys into her mind back to her summer weekend about 50 years before, where she met Anne Grant, played by Claire Danes, a young woman who had come from New York City to become the maid of honor at a high society Newport wedding of her dearest friend from college, Lila Winterborn, played by Mamie Gummer. The bride-to-be is jittery and turns to her maid of honor rather than her own mother for support. Anne stays close to her friend, yet is even closer to Lila's irresponsible brother, played by Hugh Dancy. Unexpected feelings surge forward once man meets wedding guest Harris Arden, played by Patrick Wilson, a lifelong friend and intimate of the Winterbourne family. Anne's love for Harris will change her life and those of her daughters forever. And it changes my life because, good lord, that is a lot to take in with this movie. And really, I think the biggest problem with the movie in particular just comes from the fact that they had the big names in here. They had nothing else really to go with it. This is a film that is just so filled with so much boring stuff going on here. It's a film that has so many big stars attached to it that they felt like as soon as they could put those names in there, that's going to sell the movie no matter what. They could just do whatever they want to do and just it'll work from there. And it just doesn't do that. It's a boring film that wastes a lot of really good talent on here on stories that just there's so many different stories going on in here, and none of them really connect as well as they wanted to. It's a film that I think is only relevant because of all the big names they have in here, and it just feels like there's just nothing else there besides those big names, and just that was it. That's how they sold the film, and they do nothing to kind of move the story along at a smooth enough pace. It's just all over the place. Nothing really happens in terms of moving the story along that makes it worth it in the end. It's a boring film. It's a lazy film that wastes a lot of good talent. A better film could have been made with all these people involved in it, had the script been better, but as it is, no, not so much. Evening is not a good film per se. Avoid it like the plague. And so with all that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies as we get to the midway point of 2007 with 3 big movies, including Michael Bay's Transformers with Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox, Robin Williams, John Krasinski, and Mandy Moore starring in the comedy License to Wed, and Christian Bale and Steve Zahn starring in Rescue Dawn. We'll take a look at those 3 movies. That'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the place on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, notification button, and the bell because you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post new videos here every day. Now don't go too far away because coming up after I upload this episode of Time About the Movies, we have a new Time About the Movies flashback coming up with Cheech Marin starring in Born in East LA. We also have Dirty Dancing with Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey, the Garbage Pail Kids movie, and also The Big Geezy with Dennis Quaid and Ellen Barkin. So we're flashback to August 21st, 1987, coming up on Talking About the Movies. I keep saying talking. Time About the Movies flashback. That's coming up as soon as I post this episode up here. So stick around. We will be right back with that after this.